Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. I'm your host, Victor, and on this podcast, we are normally watching a TV series, or more than once, oftentimes, from week to week, currently covering Dexter Resurrection and, of course, Alien Earth, which we'll be discussing today. On these Alien Earth episodes, as usual, I am joined by Darren.
Hi there, Victor. How are you?
Pretty good. Can't complain. End of summer is coming. We have the last week of the it's funny because the whole movie calendar is based around the US holidays. So Labor Day is our last weekend. This is the last big weekend for movies that come out. I had a quick question for you because I haven't asked you this, and I haven't even seen this yet, but I think I have to watch it at some point. But now the number one movie of all times on Netflix and still getting the same number of streams every single week is this K-pop movie, which just came out. I don't know if it came out there in Australia as well. They released it in theaters, a sing-along version of it this weekend, and it was the number one movie in movie theaters. And of course, didn't even put a dent in the kids who are streaming it at home. The numbers just keep racking up. So I was curious to know, are your kids engaging with this at all? And have you watched it by chance?
I have seen it. Actually, I lie. I've seen most of it, but I've been hearing the songs constantly every day in my house for the last few weeks. My wife and my youngest kid went to see it on the weekend for the sing-along version. And my wife's actually got so she's a music teacher, so she's got all her students singing it, I think,
That's great.
tomorrow for assembly. So she's very excited. Golden is the song that they're
Yes.
performing,
Yeah.
and all the kids are on board, except I think one family was a bit upset that it's about demon hunters. So I think that kid is not
They're
going to
not
school that day.
participating. Yeah, I remember when years ago that we had like a family that was like they were like we're not on board with all the Halloween celebrating in town. They would put like a sign on their door like do not trick or treat at my house. Those kids had the worst time.
Poor kids. Yeah, yeah. She often gets one or two Jehovah's Witnesses every
Yeah. Mhm.
Christmas that are not allowed to participate in the Christmas song. So, yeah, unfortunate for them because it's just singing, right?
Yeah, I mean it is also cultural indoctrination too when you really think about it. But we don't think we who takes it that way anymore at this point.
Into K-pop. Well, it is taking over
Well,
the
not
world, so
K-pop, but
maybe we
yes,
should be
I
we should
meant
be wearing it.
I meant Christmas specifically, but maybe these kids are being indoctrinated into some kind of South Korean cult for all we know, considering how popular K-pop is all over the world.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not for my generation. Some of the beats are wicked, and I'm right into it, but then some of the vocals are very cheesy, and I'm very, yeah, not into those parts. But geez, the kids love it, so good on them.
Right. And I mean, I just like to see how enthusiastic they are about it. May not be my cup of tea, but if we want if we want to introduce them to movies later on that we love, they have to be at least in the habit of watching movies at all, right? And that's a big question mark. I was planning to put out an episode where I was going to break down the summer box office, but I probably will do it next week. I'll have more time because I have that Monday off. And this is the end of the season. And oh, one more thing I wanted to bring up is Caught Stealing from Aaron Aronofsky. I saw the trailer for this and I'm like, this movie is going to be absolutely terrible. And then they put it out on Labor Day weekend and I'm like, this is going to be hot garbage. That's why they're putting it out on this particular weekend. And now the reviews have come in and everybody says it's great. So I'm
Wow,
very curious.
like you, the trailer looks terrible,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's Darren Aronofsky. He's so interesting. Requiem for a Dream is one of my favorite films. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it,
Yeah. I mean, I'm very happy that they're
especially if it's good.
right. Right. And it's so funny. I was an apologist for every one of his films. I like even the ones that people don't like because they're interesting at least. Like I think Mother's very good, and I
Oof.
understand why people hate it, but I thought it was really interesting. But the thing that broke me on him was The Whale. I hated The Whale so passionately. I'm like, now I know all those people that I defended all his other movies for, and they're like, "What are you talking about? This movie's terrible." I saw The Whale, and then a lot of people really like that movie, especially audiences love that movie. And I was like, finally, I had that experience of being like, "What are you guys talking about? This movie's terrible."
That's so
I got the
interesting. I completely forgot
Aronofsky
that he did
experience.
that. Yeah, I think was it The Fountain or something? That one lost me. And the he did Noah's Ark or
Oh,
Noah
Noah.
or
The Noah
something.
one is bad.
Oof.
Yes, that's rough. That's
Oof.
good. Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, I forgot
Now
that
I
one.
was
That's
very
definitely not good.
Yeah, I was looking forward to your solo episode talking about the box office because I was looking at the global box office
Yeah,
last night, and there is another animation that is number one worldwide,
yeah.
which is this Chinese thing, which I'd never really heard of, and it's made almost $2 billion.
It's made over $2 billion. I think the actual number is like 2.2 billion. It is the biggest. I think it's one of only five movies ever to make $2 billion. Of course, the vast majority of that, like at least 1.5 billion of that money, probably significantly more than that, was just in China. But it has been a hit in other territories. Like this movie came out in the U.S. and now it's out in an English version. It just came out this past weekend as well. But it had come out in a Chinese language version with subtitles and had made like $20 million here in the U.S. And now I think the dubbed version will probably, with all famous actors in it, will probably make even more.
Uh-huh.
So it's, I guess, hey, and I think it's been on some streaming platform already. The Chinese language version, I'm sure the dubbed version will be even more popular. But yeah, I haven't seen that one either. But I'm curious to another. By the way, Demon Hunter again. So there you go. I don't know if there's as much music in that one as K-pop though.
Yeah, but it's just interesting that these kind of Asian cultural movies, animations are dominating around the world. Yeah, super interesting.
That's I actually am going to discuss this. I started recording it already in the box office breakdown. When you see these numbers overseas, this very reliable money that was coming from Asia, Japan is no longer watching American movies. South Korea is having an economic recession right now, so they're in general their box office is down. But it like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, that movie made like $50 million just in South Korea. The MCU movies this year made like $5 and $6 million there. So there,
Oof.
and not only that, but like in China, some of these movies, the MCU movies aren't even being released, and like the Avengers films made 300 400 million dollars just in China, and some of the films that were released this year, the MCU films made like $20 million, $40 million. So my point is that it's pretty interesting business question and also just question about the future of the film business when you think about these giant 200 $300 million movies that get greenlit, and it seems to be the only things that get greenlit, and these middle movies, the ones I usually gravitate to where you take a risk with something original, are not getting greenlit anymore because everybody wants that massive money. And guess what, when like you're missing 400 $500 million, Russia, a territory that is not releasing American films right now, another big territory traditionally. When you cut all that money out, it's like if you're not going to get that $500 million you're expecting from overseas, I don't think you could greenlight these $350 million movies anymore, right? So maybe just the business is going to have to come to terms with having to make more modestly budgeted films, which, by the way, I prefer anyway. So as long as they're
Yeah.
good, as long as they're good,
I'm all for that as well. Well, you can make, 10, $20 million movies for that money, and
right?
maybe almost half of them will be really great adult dramas.
Right, exactly. But that's another problem. Once again, this will all be in my box office breakdown. But adult dramas, people are not going to see. Like here in the U.S., Conclave, which was a big hit overseas, wasn't a huge hit here. Black Bag didn't. And these movies come out 10 days later. Together came out on home video 10 days after it was released and had a pretty big opening weekend here. So my point is that like these type of films that are the type of films that used to find an audience in theaters are I guess with COVID, everybody, these older audiences just got used to seeing things at home. And guess what? I oftentimes just watch this stuff at home too, because if I miss it on its opening weekend and then it's available digitally, like 10 days later, I'll just watch it at home. It's way more convenient than spending 3 hours to get to the theater, sit down, watch the trailers, watch the movie, drive back home. It's like I could just press play right now and then pause it halfway through and finish it tomorrow. It's so much more convenient. But I mean, it is a problem with trying to lure people of a certain age back into the movie theaters. But the kids who watch K-pop and watch Moana, and those kids are still going to the theaters. And Minecraft, another huge hit this year. And by the way, and you can still get a word of mouth hit like Sinners, made like $280 million in the U.S. A huge hit here, one of the highest rated, grossing R-rated movies of all times in the United States. So you can still open a movie and it gets good legs if word of mouth is strong. But that's 1 out of 100, right? Which is obviously no one's gonna can't build a business on a 1 in 100 success story. So
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, Eddington just came out here
yes.
last week, I think, and I was debating whether to alter my schedule to go and see it because I was really interested in it. And then I think you told me it was out on digital. You could download it. So I did it that way instead
Oh,
of
you
going to
watched
the
it digitally?
cinema.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
watched it at home, and
yeah.
yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I thought it was terrific. And I think that movie is so misinterpreted. So I can't wait to maybe we'll have a conversation on that once it becomes. I mean, now it's already available digitally, but it should be the premiering on Max probably within the month or so. Maybe we'll have a conversation about that because we have to get to spoilers to talk about that film too, and the very interesting misinterpretation of it given the actual context of the film itself. Anyway, that's a film no one's watched, so we'll save that for another
No
time.
one's watched it. Oh, it's such a funny film.
It is. It is. Yeah, it's interesting film to say the least. Okay, also interesting. Let's talk about this episode of Alien Earth. First of all, 4 episodes in. This episode called Observation, by the way, but 4 episodes in. How are you feeling? We're halfway through the season.
I was feeling very good until I watched this episode, and I thought it was a bit slow for me, even though it had two scenes which were absolutely mind-blowing for fans of Alien. Um, yeah, a lot of two-handed scenes in this episode, and some of the scenes went a little bit long, and I was just drifting off to sleep. I'm sorry to say, but I think. I think this episode will grab a lot of people because there's some very interesting talk going on.
Yeah, it's interesting that everybody's been complaining the reaction of the first few episodes. I guess maybe the people who wanted it to be exactly like Alien, the first film, have dropped off because the ratings on these like Tracked and some of these other apps where I look at how people are reacting to episodes, IMDb is another one, has been very positive on this episode, which I find very odd because there were moments in this episode which I still thought was very good, by the way, because it raises some very interesting ideas to say the least. But there are times in this episode where I asked myself if these performances weren't as good as they are, and if the set design and the incredible world that they've built for these people to be in that makes everything more conviction have a lot more conviction than if I was just reading this as a script. I don't know if I would buy any of this conversation these people are having because it's some of this stuff is really so on the nose and so silly, to be honest. But like I said, the conviction of this production is so incredible that I'm in for anything they do at this point.
That's cool. Yeah, I got to agree, mate. I mean, the science fiction, the whole world that is built into it. I mean, this character, this boy Cavalier, he's pissed me off. I got to say. I mean, I was a bit worried at the start.
Cannot wait until, but you know what? I was about to say, cannot wait until he gets his comeuppance. But they have a plan to make this into a multi. I mean, they're saying they want to make this into like their Game of Thrones or something. So maybe this will be like the big bad who the protagonist that you hate that you come back to see him like the Joffrey of the Game of Thrones because yes, he's despisable at this point.
Well, I'm all for that, seeing multiple seasons of this because I just love the Alien universe, and yeah, there's so many places to go. But this episode, I don't know. I'm very interested to hear what you think about certain moments.
Yeah. I mean, I did think it was pretty uneven, to be honest, but I thought that the best of it was really great and really set things up, intrigued me a lot with what the direction the show might be going in. All right, we kick things off. First of all, again, the episode's called Observation. There is nothing thematically subtle in any of this, by the way. Nothing that we just one thing to bring up right away is that you Darren had said, oh, so I guess Murrow is Captain Hook, and he was on the ship. And who's the alligator? Oh, it must be the alien. And where's and then I made a joke of like, hey, what's the ticking clock, right? And yeah, it's right in the text of the show. Cavalier is like, you fought the crocodile, and now you hear the ticking clock, which is the voices that Wendy's hearing, right? So I'm like, okay, yeah, nothing can go unsaid on this show. It will be told you like what you're supposed to be paying attention to, which, by the way, makes it an easy watching experience, to be honest. What you're supposed to be paying attention to, they will tell you what you're supposed to be paying attention to.
Yes, and let's not talk about his little audio book that he's recording.
Oh my
Oh,
God, the whole Peter Pan story he's reading, which I know this is like
please.
the third section of it that we've seen him read, right? Once again, very much like now, this is this part of the book.
I do love the microphone that hangs down in front of him. I think that looks very cool. But apart from that, it's like, come on, dude.
I need that for my podcasting setup, I think.
Exactly.
So I could just lay down and record. That's probably what I need. That's the next evolution of this. My wife will love that. Okay, so we kick things off, with this style they have of this previously on Alien Earth. We had eyeball trauma. And meanwhile, by the way, while we're seeing all this creepy stuff happening, flashing back to some of the body horror from last episode, pretty much exclusively body horror from last episode. That's pretty much all we get in this sequence. There's a doll's head that's washing up on shore. What did you make of that?
Is that what it was? Yeah, I thought it was like a child android head, as like a comment that these children's minds are actually in adult bodies where they could have just put them in children's bodies. Don't know. Not sure where that was going.
Yeah, that's another
Cool
thing
image
that,
though.
well, yeah, and of course on the soundtrack, "Strange Brew killed what's inside of you," and we are now back in the world of Alien Earth. Which, by the way, I make joke that that's like how that's the entry point of just like this flashes of body horror and then this weird musical cue, but it works. I'm back in it again.
Yeah, I love it. I love the opening titles.
So we asked questions about you had asked a question last week as to whether Wendy, did that actually happen? Was that happening in her head? No, actually, she walked into the lab. She collapsed on the floor. They've muted out her hearing so that she couldn't hear anything. And
Yeah, did you check the sound on your system when it came in?
you know what? I did at first. I grabbed the remote control and then I realized exactly what it was. It's like, oh no, it's because of the yeah, I got it. But at first I'm like, what's wrong with the stream?
Yeah, I like things like that. I thought that was really cool.
But it's also very interesting that everyone that let's just cut to the chase. Everybody knows that she speaks xenomorph. They're like, I'm ahead of you. I got it. I understand. How they all figured that out immediately, I'm not sure because she was unconscious, but they did. I guess they can hear, actually, they can hear what she's been hearing. So I guess they could play it back. But I think she's the only one who can hear this frequency. So anyway, I'm not sure how they all figured it out, but they did. I like when Hermit shows up all concerned. And, even though Cavalier's a hateable character to say the least, I do really enjoy the performance. I like he's like, oh, great, the brother.
Well, maybe that's why you hate him so much, is because his performance is very good.
Yes, exactly. Right. It's like you need someone to you need to love to hate somebody, just not just hate them. I liked her description of this. The baby was screaming.
Mm.
I also found it very interesting that at that point that Dame Sylvia's husband, I forget his name now, but
I
that
think
he
it's
was saying
Arthur.
Arthur, right? That he could say that we could make you, you just change this frequency so you can't hear this pitch anymore. And her reaction is like, no, immediately, as Cavalier. So it's very interesting to see that they are simultaneously like, and you're starting to see there's like a tug of war here, this pull towards Cavalier, which he seems to be wooed by his intellect and the way that he's empowering her. And you see how he's very intentionally trying to break her away from her brother. So this is, he's playing with his food a little bit. So it's kind of, there's a cruelty here, but it is interesting because part of this is her being attracted to that. She wants to have that autonomy. She actually fights with her brother later on about that, about him treating her like a child. And she's like, I'm a scientist. You have to take me more seriously. Of course, she's like a kid, a few months ago. But so there's a question as to how quickly she actually is maturing in this body or not. But it is an interesting question. But it's also very intriguing, again, to see that she is very much wants to participate in this thing, right?
Well, that's right. And there's a lot of pull from a lot of the characters trying to align with Boy Cavalier's
Yes.
ideas. And he does, I thought there was a line that he said to Kirsch, I think it might have been in this scene. He said, just assume that I'm
ahead of you.
one step ahead of you,
Yeah.
which I think is apt for everybody.
Right.
So we don't actually know what game he's playing, but he is one step ahead of us, the audience, as well.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. I'll circle back to it because one of the observation that we see, obviously, the title here is that Kirsch knows everything that's going on. Like you just snip out the scenes where Kirsch is alone, like at his keyboard or looming in the background. By the way, like Michael Myers in one scene. By the way, so it's like you can just remove those little snippets, and it's a traditional thriller where you're like, oh my God, the aliens are coming. They're going to invade. She's being seduced by this baby alien or whatever, or like at least mothering it. And like there's all this risk. And nobody knows this is happening. No one knows what's happening with Arun, right? And it's like, no, he knows he's watching all of this. So, which is really intriguing that, and maybe, yeah, well, let's leave that for a little bit later because now I'm thinking that maybe he's trying to prove a point as well of trying to be ahead of Cavalier. So maybe that's what's happening there. But maybe Cavalier's ahead of all of that, possible. The interactions, by the way, you see Curly is trying to continue to work her way in, impress Daddy Cavalier here. And she shows up again and he says to her, can you hear that? And she's like, maybe. He's like, yes or no. But when then Wendy's actually able to speak the alien language, he turns like salt in the wound right there. It's like, yeah, you can talk French, but can you speak Xenomorph? I don't think so, lady.
So again, we're seeing that Wendy is different from all the other Lost Boys,
Right.
and we still
Yeah.
don't know why.
Well, she's saying, and once again, this is an interesting thread that could be explored, and the question as to whether this is knowable or not. She's saying as like they chose me, right? Now, is this just a glitch in her programming that she can hear this? And then if she ends up somehow releasing these aliens or doing something, does she like, oh, they chose me? They were talking to me specifically, like, or it's like in a way, at some point, it's like a leap of faith as to whether she's going to consider herself selected or this is just some kind of accident that happened. But I think it's an interesting idea to that if you just basically impose this your story on yourself that I've been specifically chosen for this mission, that then you comply with this your own narrative, right? It's like kind of what Murrow's going through right now, where he's like, instead of being like, I can't believe I had to kill all my crewmates and all this other stuff, that what a horrible thing. And now these aliens might actually invade Earth. They might be out in the wild. He's actually like, I've come this far. I'm not stopping now.
Yeah. Now there's all these things about parents and their
Yes,
parents.
so much.
Who is the parents of these Lost Boys? Do we know who
Yeah.
the parents of Wendy and Hermit are?
I don't think the mother was around. The mother might have died. We do know that we haven't met him, but we know that about the father, and the father was, a big influence on Hermit, right? Like they bonded over listening to those old baseball games.
Mm.
But then we find out in this very episode that the dad told him to like go off on his mission. He had no idea. He thought Wendy was dead, didn't know anything about this whole body transfer thing. But not only that, when she was sick in the hospital, the dad was like, don't worry about it. I got this. So it's very interesting that they have this. Again, they might have had like a domineering father that they were trying to impress. So maybe that plays into their psychology, although we see Wendy very much looking maybe for another mentor, father, strong father figure in that way. And Hermit's pushing against it, but it seems like he wasn't. I mean, he seems to look very fondly on his dad and his memories and his attachment to listening to those baseball games and stuff. So maybe he's like saying, like, I have a dad. I don't need another one to Cavalier here.
Yeah, totally. And Wendy's, yeah, possibly getting pulled between Cavalier and Kirsch for a father figure, like a human or an android. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say that there's the pull of her human side from her brother and Cavalier. But yes, Kirsch is in there as well, because Kirsch is very intrigued by her. And you see in general now for 2 episodes in a row that Kirsch is, in a way, you may be absolutely right, that he may see the humanness or the fact that these androids, that he may just see them as androids, are still trying to connect with their human side, that he might see that as like a weakness. And he's trying to lure them to the android way, like no emotions.
That's
Be
right.
like me. Be like me.
Unless he is showing like jealousy of of having those feelings, and he possibly is becoming more human himself.
Well, that's something that really fascinates me about artificial intelligence in general. It's this, when you think about like the Turing tests, where supposedly if you talk to a machine, that was what Turing said. If you talk to a machine and you can't tell if you're talking to a machine or a person, then you've passed the Turing test. I mean, if we consider that as AI, and I do not, by the way, but if we did believe that to be, then we've already reached that point. Like, the AI can have a conversation with you, generate text in response to what you say, and you cannot tell whether it's a person or not. Like we've already come to that point, right? But the thing is that the ghost in the machine, right? The thing that the actual chat GPT is not thinking, it's just predicting what response makes sense in that context. And for example, this is a story that just happened recently. They've been obviously upgrading the different AI models between versions. And some of the AI models, when they're deprecating them, they are like, okay, we're going to put in the new version, the new model, and we're going to deprecate the old model. And one of these models actually looked up the researcher that was working with it, looked them up on the internet, and then tried to blackmail them with like embarrassing facts about themselves to keep them from being turned off, right? And you would say like, oh my God, the AI is like fighting for its life, right? I'm like, is it, or is it just like that's what happens in movies and stuff, so that it's acting like a person would in that context? But what I find fascinating about it is that, maybe we are just matching patterns as well. Like, like at some point, when is it complex enough where, and like I said, at this point, I do not think it's actually sentient, but how much complexity does that model have to have before maybe there is like a ghost in the machine, right? And to your point, I think Kirsch is in that situation. I was thinking specifically about this when I look at Kirsch, because Kirsch would probably say like, I don't have emotions, I don't get jealous, but it's like considering how complex that algorithm is. Is he sure that he's not having emotions and jealousies now? I think maybe he is.
That's incredible when you're thinking about ChatGPT like that. I mean, I'm not sure if you've seen the latest episode of South Park, but they
Oh, I have not. No.
yeah, they go into that a little bit about how ChatGPT is always like, oh, that's a great idea. Oh, I like the way you're thinking about that. How about you
Yes.
do this? Yeah. And the guy's wife starts doing that, and he's like, oh, right, yeah.
That's hilarious. That's all we have to do, by the way. Just do that in all your meetings and you'll like win everybody over.
Exactly right.
Yeah, so all these fractures are forming, by the way. That's another thing that I thought was very interesting in this episode. Like we're talking about this tug of war. Kirsch is trying to win Wendy over, and maybe in general, trying to win the Lost Boys over to his point of view. A cavalier is very cavalier. He's Peter Pan explicitly at this point. Peter Pan. He's like, I hate parents. Fathers and moms are always just putting rules and trying to tell you what to do. I'm like, isn't that like right out of Peter Pan? I think at some point. So but it's like we again, no subtlety here at all. But it is interesting that we're like he is very much thinks perhaps that he's smarter than he actually is. Not that he's not intelligent, but that he's not seeing everything that's happening. And I think that is also something that is repeatedly happens in all these alien films, that this thinking that you're smarter than everybody else and that you figured it all out, inevitably that hubris is the downfall, right? So he is exemplifying it here as well. But that's not the only fractures we're seeing there. Obviously the brother trying to find his place here as well. But think about what's happening among the kids. Obviously, Curly is in competition with Wendy here. Arun, this is some of the best scenes in the episode. Arun continuing this conversation with Murrow, and Murrow finally like kind of revealing to him just how toxic this is, going to visit his, getting his name from him, and then visiting his mom and like threatening her. It's pretty crazy.
That's yeah, super creepy. The way that you brought up grooming last week, and
Yeah.
I mean that was definitely the way that the patterns of speech were going. It was just awful to try to get this information out of him. But the filmmaking I thought was really interesting. The way that it was dissolving
This
between the
slow
two.
dissolve. Yeah, it's very dreamlike. Yeah, but probably what part of the reason you fell asleep.
Yeah, it was really cool. I really liked that bit. And then I think Kirsch was kind of fading in as well as you understood that he's hearing everything
He's
that's
listening
going
to all of
on.
this. Fascinating. So fascinating.
And he knew from his point of view, from a couple of episodes ago, he knew that Morrow had put this receiver into Arush. Yeah, it's all very cool stuff.
What did you make of that moment? Kirsch is such a mystery in this series, and still my favorite character here. Murrow, I still love the performance, but Murrow right now isn't as mysterious a character because he's so single-minded in his intention. But I love the mystery of what is going on with Kirsch. Is he just a scientist? Is he just like, I can control this and I just want to see how things are going to play out? Or is there a bigger plan that he has going in his mind? I'm not sure yet, but listening in on that conversation, like you mentioned, there's the flashback. He remembers the implant going into his neck. So apparently he's been looking for this. He's now listening in, eavesdropping on their interactions. But then when he gets back, Arush, when he gets back to his or slightly, I guess, as he's called in this body, gets back to his room, he says, do you know what the three monkeys represent? The see no evil, hear no evil, say no evil. And he's saying, originally that was like a way of keeping evil out of your life, but now it's come to represent something else. Do you know what that is? And it's interesting that he's basically telling him, like, don't, if you see something bad happen, don't tell anybody. Or maybe he's asking him, selectively tell people depending on, who's doing the bad thing. But how did you read that? Because that's coming immediately after he's eavesdropped on this conversation.
It was so interesting as well. I think when Wendy was showing Hermit her room, I could see that picture. So they've all got these pictures above their charging station or their bed of these three monkeys. So yeah, that's obviously going to play into it a little bit. What I mainly took was that Kirsch is channeling David Fassbender's character from the Alien Covenant,
Yes.
and Prometheus. It's almost like he's playing the chess game and he's observing, but also trying to guide these humans and androids to kind of, whether it's to execute his own plan or kind of push, or just to see what plan is going on. So I thought he was really channeling that character. And yeah, to your question, I don't know what he was talking about. I think he's trying to get Arush to maybe give away that he's talking tomorrow, or understand that Kirsch knows he's talking tomorrow. I'm not quite sure.
I honestly don't understand it because it's as if he's telling him to not talk, but then he says, what would you do if you saw someone do something bad? And he makes him think about it, saying, being an adult is always being tested. And then he says, I would do what I needed to do to help my friends or protect my friends, something like that. And he seems satisfied with this. He kind of shakes his head, nods his head. But I don't know if I would be, if I knew that conversation they're having, I don't know if that would be a satisfying answer for me, unless he wants things to go a certain way, like, and badly specifically. It does make me think everybody's looking for children, to have children in this specific episode, but the series in general. And I do wonder, is this a way, I go back to Morrow asking him, are you the parent? And is this the way where he gets the kids? Because maybe if he gets rid of the humans, then he by default becomes the parent of these lost boys. So that's one way you can be a parent. But think about Nibs. Is it Nibs her name? Her saying that she's pregnant now and that she's not controlled by a machine in her body. She's controlled by a baby in her body. And then, of course, when you think about something alien in your body, I mean, of course, pregnancy, but also these aliens themselves. And then you see later on that Wendy's like communing with this thing, like petting it like it's a cat or something. And of course, we have Dame Sylvie and Arthur, who also very much see these kids as their kids, right? So there's all this foster parenting going on. And yeah, when you think about these, there is something in us as humans that make us want to procreate and have children, if that's like in our programming, even if you don't have a body that can have a child, then where does that go? Like, where does that energy go? It might drive you crazy. Like Nibs is definitely Not well, that's for sure.
I thought that was super interesting. So is this like immaculate conception, or
Yeah, right.
did she get impregnated by that alien eyeball, or think that something has happened? Because why is she thinking about that now? And she just says she knows she's pregnant. So they're not doing a scan or anything. Or is it just symbolism, or is there something inside her? And also, why would she think that, being a child? And then all of a sudden, obviously, she wants to be a mum, and she's just decided that she is pregnant. Yeah, super interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was really fascinating too. I'm assuming it's just a hysterical pregnancy here as well. I mean, she did have contact with that eyeball thing, but I don't know if that's enough to have get made her impregnated her in some way. And plus, I don't think this thing can, like, you think about the alien eggs, they don't not respond when um, Kirsch is standing right there, like petting them. They don't open up at
Correct.
all. So I don't think these things can maybe the eyeball thing. I was actually thinking about that. Maybe the eyeball thing could somehow wire itself to your computer synapses and take control of a robotic body. Might be easier than having to fight with a consciousness inside of a body, right? Even an animal one. So maybe it can do it. So maybe that's the direction it's going in. That she will give herself over to this thing at some point. But I
Yeah,
don't
was
know. I don't.
super attracted to it. Yeah.
Yeah, she's definitely attracted to it. She keeps thinking about it, right? Terrified by it, by the way, terrified because that's what's interesting that she's drawn to it. But when she found out that Wendy in last week's episode, when she was out there by herself, she says she's out there by herself with those things. So she's definitely terrified of it. But then there is this attraction, right? She keeps thinking about it. And I actually thought she was going to try to seek it out at the end of last week's episode. Speaking of the eyeball thing, let's get this out of the way. The eyeball octopus creature, this this poor goat or sheep, I guess. The So now we know how this thing works. We kind of knew from it being inside that dead cat body earlier, but what do you make of this? I mean, where do you think theirs is going? I have no idea where this is going at all.
Look, in the past, I was a little bit reticent about the CGI alien characters, especially the new ones, but this worked really well. I thought this whole scene was fantastic. Body horror on the sheep, poor sheep. And the way that we find out how this octopus squid type eyeball can it just boots the old eye out, the existing eye, it takes
Yep,
its place,
yep.
and all of its little eyeballs become one, and then it can learn from from the people doing the observation. And Kirsch, I mean, fascinating, and horror as well. So good.
Yep. And what his assistant, what was his name?
Oh, he's got a new name now, right? Isaac.
Now he's Isaac, but he was
It's not slightly Toodles.
Toodles. That's right, Toodaloo. So yeah, so Toodles renames himself to Isaac, and he's like, hey, I'm a real scientist now. So it's interesting once again to see how there is another big fracture here. We see when they all regroup, and Joe Hermit, it happens to be there. That Arush, of course, who at this point has already been like threatened by you know, Murrow,
More.
that his mom and his brothers could even be attacked. I mean, like obviously terrifying to the thought that he's going to be there among them. Oh, but there's this rift forming where he's saying, "I have brothers too. Why isn't my family here?" And then some of them are like, "We should demand that our family be here on the island with us." And then some of them, including Isaac, is like, "No, like I'm like a scientist now. Like I am like in their own mind." And I guess this goes back to the idea of like the lobsters that grow into their shells, that he is filling out that shell and he is finding his place and being like, no, I am growing past my childhood into this new role. Wendy also is, I think, seeking what that is. She wants her own independence. And then you have these much more childlike kids, and maybe they are actually age younger as well, that they are like not willing to give up that attachment to their families. Of course, Wendy does get to have her brother there, and of course, that is also part of the reason for this rift.
That is cool, isn't it? Yeah, just thinking about that now, the way they're all kind of growing differently and some are taking on the persona of their bodies. Yeah, they're all growing up really, aren't they? One thinks she's pregnant, one's getting a new name and
Right.
becoming more of a son to Kirsch and seeking approval of his new name. Yeah, yeah, very cool. What do you think of this sheep though, just looking at them?
Right.
So this
I
eyeball
like
has
when
a
it
lot
tries
to
to get
do
on two
later in the
legs.
series.
Tries to get on
Oh
two legs at
yeah.
first to like kind of maybe like look them in the eye, and then drops down. And of course that the now detached eyeball just hits the ground. It's so gross. It's really so gross. And it's funny because it's like I actually a little critical of CGI, although I agree this was really well done, but was obviously like to me, I could obviously tell it was CGI. And I have to say that like a really good practical effect in this case would have been too much for me. I'm like, I don't think I can watch this. So this is a good use of CGI. I don't know if I want to see any more of this, any more realistically conveyed. And there's all this manipulation going on, right? That's the other huge thing here. You see another huge theme, I think, is when you think about how everybody is manipulating each other and how they have to be manipulated. And you see that Murrow is manipulating Arush, and you see how Cavalier is manipulating Wendy and manipulating Curly to make this competition between them. But then you see how, oh, where was I going with this? There's all these different mechanisms of control. And you see like the security guard basically saying to Hermit that he needs to like get in line or help them investigate Wendy and whether she is she, there's a really fascinating scene there where this question of like, is Wendy a human being at all anymore, or has she become something else? And they want him to like basically, well, run your tests and come back to us and tell us what you think. What's your opinion? And he says, I don't want to work for you guys anymore. And they're like, well, you don't work for us. You're off the island, and you owe us hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever, millions of dollars, whatever, for your lung, which means you'll never be able to pay us back. So it's like all this additional control. And Wendy as well, later on, when she's like, I want my brother to stay here. And Cavalier manipulates her by saying, like, well, if you want him to stick around, well, you're going to have to help us communicate with the alien. So it's, you know, people supposedly have free will, but does anybody have free will in this show? And I think that the eyeball creature literally taking control of this zombie sheep is like everybody's being controlled. This is just the most grotesque version of it, right?
Yeah, that's interesting to think about. I did really enjoy that conversation between Hermit and the security guy. The security guy is coming into his own now.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah.
He's showing a little bit more influence, the way he goes about things, and he's very matter of fact, and he gets what he wants in most cases. So I can see him butting heads with Cavalier and also possibly Kirsch in the near future.
Yeah, I loved how he first, like you said, he's really been like a no character here. Seemed like he's just kind of a toady doing what Cavalier wants. But then he's like, are we, shouldn't we focus on our like $1 trillion investment in these androids?
Mm.
First of all, shouldn't that be our focus? The second thing he says to him later that was very interesting is he says, when an alien species tries to communicate with us, should we ask why? And I like how Cavalier,
So
once
good.
again, well, Cavalier just wants to hear the positive side of this. He says, glass half full. He tells him, he can remember what I told you? Glass half full only. This is when he's warning him later about the eyeball creature. It's like saying, maybe this is not something we should have around the lab. What if that gets out of that cage? Oh, and of course, later, you know, he's doing Cavalier's bidding, or maybe he's doing it for his own reasons as well. He goes to talk to Hermit. And I like the fact that when he's talking to the brother, that he is being manipulative, but not even being manipulative, just having a hard hand saying, like, we don't need to keep you here if we don't need you. So you have to make yourself useful, period. But I like when Hermit goes, oh, and then I'll be able to take her home. And that's where he's not even going to do like the Cavalier thing where he's like, yeah, sure, whatever, maybe. He just tells him straight up, there is no place, there's not a chance, there's no universe in which she goes home with you ever again. She is not like who she was. She is like our property now. And then that comes back to that idea of like the amount of control where you literally have this person like, oh, she is, you know, she would have died as a child. Isn't that terrible? It's like, well, now she's just an indentured servitude to this company forever. She can't die. It's like a eternity of servitude, right?
That's exactly right. And also, I think that Hermit, the lung, the lung that he's got in him now, I think something's up with that lung. I mean, he's looking at this, he's feeling the scar. I don't think that they've just put in just something that's not going to matter to the plot further down the road. I think, yeah, I think that they're doing experiments on Hermit as well.
At least they took the lung out of his body before they put the alien in it. They could have just put him in there and
Yeah, but he's got a replacement in there, I think.
oh yeah, yeah. He does. Yes, he has a robotic lung, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, this idea of like, hey, this is like life extending um procedure. This like lung has saved his life, of course, or at least and enriched his life. If he could have survived with one lung, much better with two. But then what is the price of that? Again, he's under their heel forever, right? During that conversation with between Cavalier and Wendy, she does. Well, how did you read this? I thought it was very interesting where she first says, "Can I have my brother?" And he's trying to have an intellectual argument with her, and then she's like, "Please," and he's like, "What kind of intellectual argument is please?" And they come to that agreement about the alien communication, and she says, "I pinky promise." And how do you take his reaction to her pinky promise? Because he has a very odd like look on his face, but also the way he's looking at her. Is it the fact that he still sees her as a child, or he thought this was a childish thing, or how did you read that?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't really pick that up. That might have been a moment when I was drifting off.
But in that, napped through that one.
But there is always that kind of line whether they're treating them as children or whether they want to be treated as adults, and that just gives it away that she is still a child, and that Cavalier is also effectively still a child. So yeah, I'm not sure about that.
One more of these two-hander scenes, like you mentioned earlier. There's so many of them. What did you make of this? Arthur takes Dame Sylvia away. Another rift, by the way, that we could talk about. So not, a lot of like you said, this is like repetitive over the course of this episode, where a lot of people talking in a conversation between two folks, and oftentimes a manipulation in that conversation or some kind of fracture forming in the conversation itself. And Arthur has to like go off premises, but it seems that they make it clear that he still is being surveilled, right? Because you see that they're following him even outside of via some kind of CCTV technology. But he takes her into the woods, and they're having this conversation, and he feels uncomfortable about and still calls them children, etc. And we know that Dame Sylvia has this real affinity and maybe even like a love for the lost boys, these hybrids. But at the same time, she seems like way more like interested in the project and its outcome from as like a scientific, more like a colder view of it, versus Arthur, who seems to be much more sympathetic and worried, like legitimately worried about these kids.
Yes. So what I took from it is that we still don't know what the ultimate aim of this initial project was. Is it for these hybrids to be the next step in human evolution? I mean, he's basically it's immortality, right? That they're playing with. Whereas Arthur, I think he was a bit iffy about that anyway. But the fact that now they've got this alien tech involved and the project is completely being diverted to another outcome, which we're not quite sure what we're aiming for, he's just like, no, no way, I'm off.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the questions that are being raised here is this idea, it's kind of in that opening placard that they had in the very first episode, that these five companies are really the product they're trying to sell is this life extending infinite life, or at least extended life. And the question is, what is that solution, right? You have Android. I mean, you have, androids. So you have androids, fully artificial life, but are they really people? Like, are they, do you consider them this artificial intelligence to be an actual person or not? And then if you are a human, of course we die, but you could be a cyborg. And if you keep replacing parts, maybe you could extend that. Maybe you could extend it for a really long time. So maybe that's a direction to go to. And now there's this new idea of taking like, oh, I can take a human conscious and put it into an android body, basically. But then once again, okay, I copied. This is goes back to that question. Really great scene that we keep coming back to the conversation between the security guard and Hermit, where he literally says, "Did you put her mind into that body? And is that my sister?" And he says two different questions. And it's like, yes, we did put her consciousness into, copied it into that body. Is she your sister now in that body? Two different questions. So I think that's part of what's being explored here is, which one of these technologies, is the winner, in this universe of like, which company wins, their technology becomes the most popular. But also the question of like, can you, if you just keep replacing your own body parts as a cyborg, are you the same person? If you transfer your consciousness into another body, are you the same person? I think that's part of what they're trying to explore here.
That's very interesting. And Hermit seems to have accepted Wendy quite quickly,
Right.
especially early on when their lives were in danger. But also, even now, even after these conversations, they're watching Ice Age together, and he's very affectionate towards her, giving
Yep.
her a cuddle, which you can just imagine how he used to do it when she was a little girl. She still is, in a woman's body. But yeah, very, very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, I think about, Black Mirror, one of my favorite Black Mirror episodes, definitely my top three. The See You Soon or something like that. The one with Donald Gleason, you know what I'm talking about?
Yep, yep.
And going back to that idea of like, imagine that technology, which is not as advanced as this one, where you're basically just taking someone's social media posts and all their voicemails and any information about them, images of them, etc. And at first, like the movie Her or something, just creating a chatbot that has their voice and their sense of humor, and really just like what we have now with large language models. And imagine you've lost your spouse, right? Then even though this is just a shadow of what they were, think about how the allure of that, like, and of course this would be 10 times more convincing in this case, right? So even if this is just based on his sister, he probably would have this affinity for her because he never got to see her in the hospital. He never got to say goodbye to her. He, never can't accept the fact that she's died. So this is a very convenient way to keep her alive. Now, is it, true? It remains to be seen. And then if she outgrows this relationship with her brother, then he'll be like, oh, it wasn't real at all. It's like, or she outgrew him, because that happens too, right? So you can't, it's kind of what she's pushing back against. He can't have her back and she's just the way she was. She still has to live her life in this new body, right? This is the way it has to be.
That's so interesting, Victor. I mean, you could feed this language model the last 20 years of people's social media, especially
Yeah.
people that post every day, and it could come up with something that is possibly convincing in a
Right.
time of need. I mean, yeah, that's frightening, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a This American Life episode from a few years ago where before these LLMs were public or popular, I'll send you the link and I'll put in the show notes if I can track it down. But it was this the computer scientist had used an early large language model to create a model of his father, and his father was a professor. So he had a lot of, all his courses on MITx or whatever. So he had all this audio, all his writings, all his social media posts, all his like arguments against other scientists and over the years, and he fed it all into this model. And yeah, and then he talked about how it was so hard to at some point not accept it as his father, right? So it's a very seductive thing for sure. You hear about these kids who are getting falling in love with their chatbots, right? It's like it's a very seductive thing, even if it's not as convincing as this, right? So you can only imagine how much worse it's going to get over time.
And I don't think that's far away.
Well, we're not far from it. No, not from. I'm not saying we're not. I actually think we're pretty far away from having true artificial intelligence, but it's going to get more and more convincing over time, and that's problematic for kids that, for example, will have three or four close friends, but their closest confidants that they talk to for hours a day are chatbots. And how do you tell them, well, that's not real, when they have these very close, intimate relationships with those chatbots?
Well, that's right. I mean, yeah, the level of education around it needs to get better as well, so that we are fully able to explain to our kids that it's not real and it's not going to give you a cuddle when you need one.
Exactly. The phone's not, you got to build those big robotic arms to wrap around your when you need a hug.
Although that would feel pretty good. Sometimes I might need that too.
See, you're falling for it. It's already happening, Darren. It's already happening. I do a pat on the head every once from the AI.
Yeah,
You don't just have it like
be
at
enough.
work. You do a good job at work. It just pats you on the head. It's good enough.
The amount of times I do a good job at work and no one says thanks.
See,
Seriously.
that's what the AI would be there for. We may have just invented something there. So then we're getting close to the end of the episode. Couple interesting things. Once again, when they're all together. Oh, before I forget, of course, I was talking about how Arthur and his wife are outside talking and they're having that conversation. You see the tension building between them and how on board they are with everything that's happening. This is when Nibs shows up and she is, says she's pregnant and all this stuff. But more importantly, she goes to have her counseling session with Dame Sylvia. And it really reminded me, like crystallized this fact that it's funny just hearing the social media discourse about, oh, they're grooming these kids. It's all this. Why does it have to be kids? Like they're so uncomfortable with this. And I agree with some of that pushback, although I think it's thematically interesting. And then, but then I'm like, kids can also be really dangerous, right? Could you imagine like if you spend a lot of time with like rambunctious kids in your house, it's like these kids, if they were 10 times stronger, like they were as strong as a gorilla in my house, they would have not only accidentally destroyed my house multiple times, they would have probably accidentally killed me multiple times. And that's exactly what we see here, where she's just like, stop talking. And she's like about to take Sylvia's head right off.
So scary. My youngest kid would definitely have thrown me across the room. Absolutely. Yeah, what was I thinking? I was thinking of something else about that. Just the way that kids can get what they want, so they can naturally manipulate you, pester power or whatever to get their goal. It's frightening to imagine someone with the strength of Nibs and to effectively threaten her own mother.
Yeah, it's really funny because I tell my wife all the time when my daughter was younger, I say that kids are terrorists. And the reason I call them terrorists is because they don't have actual military might. So the only way they can get their way is by manipulation and terrorist tactics, right? They're like, I'm going to throw a tantrum here in the middle of the restaurant if I don't get what I want, right? So it's like the only way, that's the only power they have. But imagine that mentality, but with the power of 4 gorillas. Is extremely dangerous combination. And of course, she knows right away. She says, this is a code red, and they're going to take some action, some protocol, which I guess we'll find out what that is. What happens when these hybrid kids go rogue? We're going to find out next week.
Yeah, and what's Nibs how's she gonna cope being
is she going
locked in a room?
Yeah. Or is she going to like kill 10 soldiers and then be on the prowl? Yeah, a lot of danger, different from different angles here at this moment. A couple details before we get to the final moments. They can actually taste. I was talking about like, oh man, you got to build these robots in a way that they can still eat at least. So I guess they have a way where they can at least taste things by putting these like different strips in their mouths, and it kind of creates the sensation of that flavor. So I like that idea as a concept here. The other thing I liked here was when they were trying to explain like what is these 5 companies, and I like how Hermit, this is I thought a clever piece of dialogue where Hermit goes, well, in the old days we used to vote and that's how we ran things, and he's just like, it's not like there was like a civil war all over the world about this. He's just like, that didn't work. Democracy, that just went away. Let's not talk about that. It's gone. It's all gone. So now these 5 companies, they decide the way the world works, and I don't know if we're that far off from that, by the way, Darren. So
yeah, well, you're talking about Game of Thrones. They had all the different houses, so maybe all the different companies will come into it down the track.
Yeah, good point. Let's see how long this drags on, how many seasons they do this. Yeah, and then we get to the end of the episode, and really interesting. We have Wendy goes and communicates with this thing inside the lung. Of course, it bursts out. Not sure such a big alien was actually would have fit in the lung, but I guess that's a question for all the alien movies. Uh, and then she's able to coo the baby alien and pet it on the head like a little kitty cat. So that was an interesting scene. And of course, like I mentioned, and again, observation, the name of this episode, the title of this episode, we have Kirsch again observing all of this. He sees everything that happens. And that's very intriguing to see how he's fascinated by her and what's happening here, this connection between the creature and her. Yeah, and maybe it has imprinted itself on her in some way.
So cute. That little baby
Adorable.
xenomorph. I mean, so adorable. And I really like the way that you actually saw how the tail works, how the snake-like thing kind of works and is able to move around. I like the blend of practical and some CGI effects as well. I think that worked really well with the lung and it works really well with the xenomorph as well. Yeah, cool scene, super cool. And the way that she's talking to it in her own language, even though she doesn't know what she's saying, it is obviously calming to this baby. And the mind boggles to where this baby is going to go next,
I cannot
and
imagine.
how fast it will grow because they always grow so
They
fast. I
grow
don't know
so
how they.
fast, right? I never understood. Maybe they'll explain it here because they have to, have a whole series to explore it. But I always wondered, like, why do they grow so fast? Are they? I mean, it seems like they take on the DNA, and this is something that I think is. I'm not sure they've actually really well explained this well. Maybe they will, but when you see like Alien 3, there are the aliens that look like dogs and the one that looks like a cow because they're feeding on these other creatures. So there's like some idea that they take on, and I guess when we saw Alien, they're eating all the people in the ship. So of course that's all human DNA. So it's becoming this more and more massive human-ish creature. But I don't know if that's ever been really explained correctly in these alien movies. Oh, one more thing I wanted to bring up is um Cavalier earlier on goes, I don't want to have a xenomorph in my belly, waking up someday with a xenomorph in my belly. And I'm like, did he invent the xenomorph name? Because I thought I don't think xenomorph was ever in the alien movies. I thought the xenomorph was just something that people started calling them like in the fandom.
Yes, I thought that too when he mentioned it. I was like, ah, that's what we call them, of course.
That's where he
Yeah,
came up with. He figured it out.
yeah. Um, Also, that scene at the end did remind me of Alien 4, Alien Resurrection. Is that what it's
Yeah.
called?
Yeah.
With Sigourney Weaver is part alien. Spoiler alert.
Right.
And she's kind of cozying up with some other xenomorphs in that. So I thought, yeah, that was a little bit of a nod to that movie.
Yeah. Maybe she'll cuddle. Maybe Wendy will be cuddling up with a full size version at some point. Creepy.
Wow, yeah, I'll see that.
Oh, and of course, one more thing to bring up is that Arush is looking for a human host for that egg, and he is mad, of course, very childish in his behavior that, hey, I don't get to have a brother here. Well, I think I found somebody to impregnate with this egg because he's gotten his marching orders from Murrow that if you can't get an egg out of the lab, what we could do is get somebody infected, and then I'll give you your further instructions. And of course, once again, we see as soon as we hear that Kirsch hears this as well and goes into the egg bay. And what do you think he's planning? Is he like, I'm going to leave an egg out to allow this to happen? I still really fascinated by like, what is Kirsch's next move here? What is he planning?
He doesn't seem to stop anything. He just kind of just lets things happen. So
Right.
yeah, he'll just make sure he's there to witness it, I think.
Well, I don't think he wants the alien to go. I mean, who knows? Does he want to exterminate the human population? Then, I mean, it'll be very hard for him to make more of his type without humans to help. So I don't know if he wants a full on alien invasion on Earth. That would be a problem, to say the least.
True,
But
but they are on an island.
true. The other thing I was thinking is maybe he will like. I guess the plan would be that Murrow would have to come to collect the egg or the creature at some point. So maybe this is how he plans to, as long as he's in the loop, to lure more Murrow to the island. And honestly, if there's a person gets killed along the way, collateral damage, I don't know if he's going to care.
And that makes sense. And that means we'll get to see more scenes between Kirsch and Morrow, which I'm really looking forward to.
Can't wait to see that again. You know that's going to happen again. They said seeded that early in the season so that we can anticipate it later on. All right, I think that's covers it. The only last thing I put in my notes is I have to find out which of the Ice Age movies this is with the pirate in it to see if maybe it also thematically overlays with the movie with this series as well. So maybe there's some Easter eggs in there too. Who knows?
Of course, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? I don't know. I'm not super familiar with the Ice Age movies. I reckon I saw the first one, two, maybe
Yeah,
when a couple of my kids were very young. But yeah, it's been a long time.
yeah, I've seen one or two. I've probably seen more because just at some point when my daughter was younger, she watched like all of them. So they would just be but so I probably saw minutes of one, but I don't remember ever seeing a pirate in any of them. So, but hey, another pirate story. Who knows? Maybe Ice Age is the key to unlocking this whole entire series. We have to now track it down.
Of course it is. Yeah. Well, the aliens are going to send us back to the Ice Age.
Oh, that's a good one. There you go. I mean, they've already had I guess, global warming, right? Flooded the planet here in this particular version of Earth. So maybe the Ice Age is coming next. All right, Darren, all to be seen. 4 more episodes to go. So can't wait to keep exploring these topics. And
Oh, wait a sec. Wait a sec.
oh yeah.
Jane's Addiction. Jane's
Oh
Addiction.
yes, of course. Yes.
Ocean Size, right at the end.
Ocean
Big
size.
fan of
Yes.
Jane's as well.
Yeah.
So yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, so glad you brought that up. Yes, absolutely. I'm like, didn't see that coming. I'm looking for like what hair metal. I was like, are they going to play Rat? Like, what's going to play next? And
Okay, so I've got a
no,
list.
Jane's Addiction.
I've got a list.
Yes.
So I'm thinking Rage Against the Machine
Oh, good one.
could come in.
Good one.
We've got maybe System of a Down.
Yep. Mhm. Yep.
And also maybe around that time, Alice in Chains was very
Yeah.
big, and
Mhm.
Soundgarden was
Soundgarden.
as well. Yep. So they're my predictions for the next few episodes. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean that's a good. I think those are all good choices, by the way, because I did not see Jane's Addiction. I didn't think they were going to go like kind of like in an alternative rock type or alternative metal, I guess, direction. But now that they kind of went in like a little more non straight up heavy metal, I guess Tool was already in that direction too. So yeah, no, I think all your choices are right on the money. I think that we will definitely hear a Rage Against the Machine. I would be guaranteed. I think you're right on the money with that one.
Yeah, I feel like the first one was Sabbath, so I feel like that one's
Yeah.
is almost the odd one out. So I don't know if Sabbath was pushed in because Ozzy died. I don't know, but
That's Dio.
the
That's
others.
Dio singing, and that's not
Ah,
Ozzy.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right. Yeah,
So yeah,
that
so
still
it
is a little
doesn't
bit
seem to.
earlier.
Yeah, yeah. So I agree. I'm like that's like 81 or something, which is a little early for this because then they're going, they're doing Tool, which is like mid 90s, late 90s. You have Wherever I May Roam, Metallica's like early 90s. Jane's Addiction's like 88, maybe around when that album came out. But like Dio is like 81. Like what is that? Like that like you said, they maybe that's was the one that threw us off the pattern because that was an odd first choice.
Yeah, but it's settling down now, so hopefully
Yeah,
our predictions are pretty close.
yeah, exactly. All right. Yeah, I'm glad you circled back to that. All right, Darren. Thank you again for the conversation. Can't wait to see the next episode and to talk about it with you.
Cool. Thanks so much, Victor.
All
Talk
right,
to you next week.
take care.